number 2, and we will present the topic of drugs consumption. We will explain the principal characteristics, effects, and consequences of the most consumed drugs in our social environment. Let's begin. The introduction of the topic is that the information that will be exposed to you is very useful not only for general culture, it also is helpful in our daily life. To be aware about how drugs can affect you in our social environment and on the individual. In this video, we'll be presenting the consequences of and the effects of most of the most common drugs that are used or could be found.
Hi guys, I will talk about alcohol. In everyday language, it is known as alcohol as a chemical ethylene compound, also named ethyl alcohol. It is a colorless and flammable liquid whose boiling point is 78 degrees. There are different kinds of alcohols. Ethanol alcohol, it is only used in drinks, and it is produced by the fermentation of grains and fruit. Fermenting is a chemical process where the yeast adds upon in certain ingredients in the food, creating alcohol. Alcohol is classified as a drug, which means it acts to the central nervous system at high doses, and in lower doses, alcohol acts to stimulate, including feelings. Now I will talk about the effects of the alcohol. In the brain, alcohol decreases memory. In the liver are nausea, vomiting, and headache. In the kidney, it removes more water than it ingests. In the stomach, causes a hairburn. Blood flow increase in the skin, and sweating occur. In the lungs, alcohol accelerates the respiration, and in the heart, causes an increase of cardiac activity.
Tobacco is a plant whose leaves have high concentration of the chemical called nicotine, which produce addiction. This plant has large leaves and beautiful flowers, in addition to a great height equal to or greater than that of an adult person. For years, the leaves of this plant were consumed aspirated in a very fine powder or chewed. You can also smoke in the form of cigars, formed entirely by snuff, both in this content and in its wrapping in the form of cigarettes, with the content of tobacco. Nicotine is a stimulant substance, but most smokers believe that smoking relaxes them, but it is actually because it calms the anxiety caused by the lack of nicotine in the body, a symptom of the abstinence syndrome. From the moment an individual becomes an habitual smoker, the toxic components of tobacco smoke begin a slow but indefatigable work. Among the effects that can cause you to use tobacco are premature fatigue, an increased risk of angina, increase in constipation, cold and expectorations, loss of appetite, alterations in the pulse rhythm, yellowish color of fingers and teeth, and bad smells that comes from your mouth. There are also a number of diseases that are directly related to smoking, such as lung cancer, bronchitis, pulmonary emphysema, and cardiovascular problems. There are other diseases that also tend to occur in smokers, such as other forms of cancer, lip, mouth, larynx, esophagus, and bladder. Some effects that can occur in your lungs and cells are: the tar is deposited in your lungs and contains chemicals called carcinogens, which promote the development of cancer cells in the body. You are exposed to chemicals such as benzene and formaldehyde, which have been associated with various types of cancer, such as leukemia or kidney cancer. It is important to remember that half of smokers die from tobacco use and that death generally occurs during the productive years of the person, leaving the family without a source of income. In addition to the cost of cigarettes, it is important to add the cost of treating diseases caused by smoking. The cost of treating diseases caused by exposure to tobacco smoke in non-consumers, particularly the respiratory problems of children. The loss of work days due to illness and premature death. The higher cleaning and maintenance costs in smoking homes, greater replacement of curtains and carpets, higher risk of accidents and fires, and the higher cost of many insurance policies, life, home, car, and health for smokers. We have seen tobacco is one of the most consumed drugs, among other things, because in our society, the consumption of tobacco is related to all kinds of social events. This relationship leads to the abuse of the consumption and the realization of the compulsive, unconscious way and putting our own health at risk. Some important recommendations that must be taken into account are not to consume. If you are under 18 years old, if you suffer or have suffered from lung disease, asthma or respiratory disorders, if you are pregnant, if the reason it takes you to consume is because other people say that it will be great, or if you think it can measure or cheer you up.
Well, hi again! Now I will talk about marijuana or cannabis sativa. Do you hear me say cannabis sativa? Well, cannabis sativa is the scientific name of the marijuana, of the plant known as marijuana. Most of the characteristics is that is one of the most common used drugs. It could be ingested by smoking, eating, and drinking. The effects of marijuana could start between the 15 minutes and the 30 minutes. I will explain why later. The principal psychoactive that acts in the cannabis is the tetrahydrocannabinol, better known as TCH. I will call it like that. Well, some of the effects of the cannabis are: when you smoke it, you start to feel the effects almost instantaneously. You begin to feel pleasant, euphoria, and feel relaxed. Another possible effect was now a little bit worse. Is like you can feel a sensitivity in sensory perception, mirrored, altered perception of time, and appetite increase. Some people might experiment anxiety, fear, distrustfulness, or panic. If consumed in high dose, could make the people experiment acute psychosis, hallucination, mirage, and loss of the long sense of sense and identity sense. What scary, right? Let's talk about individual consequences of the cannabis. Well, first of all, we need to know that cannabis affects temporarily the judgment of the person, the coordination, and the reaction. So all the activities that require coordination, attention, and concentration could be affected by the consumption of this drug. So, also, when it is consumed regularly, it affects the learning capacity and may last like weeks. So for the students or people in work, could affect you a lot in what you're doing, and could make that your capacity decrease a lot. And also some studies have related the consumption of cannabis with less academic achievements, higher possibilities to develop drug dependency, use more drugs, and try to kill themselves. Some tests but a little bit different, have tested and relate cannabis consumption with low economic incomes, less satisfaction with their lives, criminal behavior, and unemployment.
Now let's talk about heroin. Heroin is an opioid drug made from morphine and other substances taken from the seed pod of various opium plants. Heroin can be a white or brown powder or a black sticky substance known as black tar heroin. People inject, sniff, snort or smoke heroin. People also combine heroin with crack cocaine in an activity called speedballing. If we talk in the standpoint of effects, we can have that heroin enters the brain rapidly and binds to opioid receptors. The receptors are located in many areas, especially those related in feelings of pain and pleasure, and in controlling heart rate, sleeping, and breathing. People who use heroin report feeling a rush or euphoria. Other common effects include dry mouth, heavy feelings in the arms and legs, and clouded mental functioning. If we talk about some long-term effects, we have that it may include collapsed pains, infection in the heart lining and valves, abscesses, and complications. Some research suggests that the misuse of prescription opioid pain medicine is a risk factor for starting heroin use. This is because it's made from the same substance, morphine, so it is some of a getaway to get addiction to heroin. A person can overdose on heroin. Naloxone is a medicine that can treat a heroin overdose when given right away. Without more than one dose, it may be needed. This is because this type of medicine depends on how the metabolism of the person works, and heroin can lead to addiction, a form of substance use disorder. Abstinence symptoms may include severe muscle and bone pain, sleep problems, diarrhea and vomit, and several heroin cravings, also known as drug cravings. A range of treatments, including medicines and behavioral therapies, are effective in helping people stop heroin use. However, treatment plans should be individualized to meet the needs of the patient. Drugs like heroin being so popular in our country because Mexico, Colombia, Southeast and Southwest Asia are the principal producers of heroin. So it is some of what heavy traffic and use of the drug in the country. This means that many young people, children and teenagers maybe get hooked up to this drug, and this can lead to various health problems, addiction problems, crime histories for protection of drugs and things like that. Also, drugs like heroin can open up pathways to heavier drug abuse and heavier drugs. In my opinion, individuals who are in need of help now can easily search for it, because now in the present time we have a lot of centers and people available to help people with these types of problems. So they're not alone, they can get some help, and this can help them to get out of this addiction. These types of drugs can also have a very heavy popularity between teenagers of my age group, 15, 16, 17. So there is also an abuse of this drug between age groups. And if we work as a society, we can work to eliminate these types of problems in the future. Now let's talk about methamphetamine. Methamphetamine is a usually white or bitter tasting powder or a pill. Crystal methamphetamine looks like glass fragments or shiny bluish white rocks. Methamphetamine can also have a different name as meth. It is an accortation of the word methamphetamine. So for now on, I'm going to call it meth. Meth is a stimulant drug that is chemically similar to amphetamine that is used to treat ADHD and narcolepsy. People can treat meth by inhaling, smoking, swallowing, snorting, or injecting this drug. Meth, if we talk about the effects, increases the amount of dopamine in the brain, which is involved in movement, motivation, and enforcement or rewarding behaviors, aka the reward system. Short-term health effects may include increased wakefulness and physical activity, decreased appetite, and increased blood pressure and body temperature. Some long-term health effects may include the risk of contracting HIV and hepatitis, severe dental problems. This has a specific name known as meth mouth, intense itching leading to skin sores from scratching, and violent behavior and paranoia. Some researchers, or the majority, don't yet know whether people bringing in second-hand smoke of meth can have effect on these people. This is because this is still like a new drug, so there is so many research going on right now to investigate these types of effects and know what we can do with this drug. A person can overdose on meth, and because it is a new drug, almost a new drug, there is no government-approved medicine for an overdose for meth. But sometimes, in an overdose of meth, people can experience a stroke, a heart attack, or organ problems. First responders and rural emergency doctors try to treat the overdose by treating these conditions first. Meth is highly addictive. This is because it attacks the reward system. So our brain thinks that it is useful. It makes us feel good. And this feeling of feeling good makes people get very addicted to this type of drugs. If we talk about some abstinence symptoms of withdrawing from taking this drug, we have that it may include anxiety, fatigue, severe depression, psychosis, and intense drug cravings. Also, with heroin, there's also drug cravings. The consumption of these drugs are artificially creates major health risks for every population in the world, including children and teenagers. The addition of other drugs, substances, and chemicals into the creation process of meth can lead to very high dosage, various concentrations. It may have like flavors and get more people hooked up. And we also had the problem that because it is highly addictive, people are still searching for it. And because people are still searching for it, they are searching for people that can get them drug, and this leads up to getting more meth labs, as we can say, in all over the country. Because it is a chemical created drug, there can be a lab everywhere, anywhere, like in Breaking Bad, where the meth lab was in a camper van. So this facilitates the distribution of the drugs in cities, in rural areas, and all over the world. And this is a problem that we need to address as rapidly as we can.
Okay, LSD. I'm gonna start with a scientific explanation. The lysergic acid, or LSD, is a psychedelic semi-synthetic substance that refers to ergoline and the family of tryptamines and that produce hallucinogenic effects. The first effect of LSD appear between 30 and 90 minutes after administration. They can last from 7 to 12 hours, having their maximum power between 3 and 5 hours. The symptoms. Among its physical symptoms have been described dilatation of the pupils, increased body temperature, heart rate and blood pressure, sweating, insomnia, dry mouth, and tremors. The risks. When LSD produces unpleasant experience, it is called a bad trip. It is the most remarkable risk of its ingestion and hallucinogenic drugs in general. You may experience a loss of emotional control, anxiety, or panic. LSD can also cause severe psychiatric disorders such as anxiety and psychosis. In general, it is rare that the sensation extend beyond the duration of their effects. However, in people predisposed to suffer some type of psychological or psychiatric disorder, it can trigger the disorder temporarily, and the consumption of LSD produces, among other effects, euphoria, sensory alterations, and hallucination. Where it comes from. This semi-synthetic drug was synthesized for the first time in 1938 from the fungus of ergot. The way to consume it. The consumption of LSD can be done in different ways, being the trippies or cartoons the best known. The trippies can be placed in the mouth or under the tongue and let them slowly release their dose, taking between 30 and an hour to feel its effects. It also swallows the trippie directly. Another quicker way to take advantage of it is to put the cardboard in your eye, the pupil to be exact. Okay, now cocaine. What is it? The cocaine is an alkaloid that is obtained from the coca leaf, a plant that grows in South America, of which there are 200 varieties, which only 4 produce the said alkaloid. Why do people consume it? Scientists have discovered regions on the brain that are excited by all kinds of gratifying stimuli such as food, sex, and in this case the cocaine. Studies in animals have shown that gratification increases the levels of a chemical in the brain called dopamine. How is it consumed? The main routes of administration of cocaine are oral, nasal, intravenous, and pulmonary. The resulting euphoric effect is almost immediate, and it is the reason why the popularity of crack increased enormously in the mid-80s. Now the symptoms. The symptoms are restriction of blood vessels, dilatation of the pupils, sickness, increase in body temperature and blood pressure, acceleration or irregularity from the heart rate, tremors, and muscle spasms. Causes in a large period of time. Since cocaine is an extremely addictive drug, it is very difficult for a person to try to predict or control how long it will continue to desire or consume it. Also, if the person becomes addicted, the risk of relapse is high even after long periods of abstinence. When repeatedly exposed to cocaine, the brain begins to adapt to it and the reward path becomes less sensitive to natural reinforcers and the drug itself. The consumer can develop tolerance, which means that he will need an increasing dose of the drug or that he will have to consume it more frequently to obtain the same pleasure as when he first started using. The chronic use causes loss of appetite, causing many consumers to have significant weight loss and suffer from malnutrition.
Conclusion. Well, the conclusion is that drugs are too dangerous for health, both physical, psychological, and social. But in actual time, there is many ways to treat the drugs addiction. It exists a lot of medicines available to control the consumption. Also exist many therapies that help an individual to stop consuming drugs, like the cognitive behavior therapy, techniques of management of behavior, stimulus and motivation therapies, etc. etc. There are a lot. The decision of consuming drugs is yours. Now you know the consequences of your actions and how all that you do may affect you in some way. The decision of stop drugging is also yours. But the question here is, what are you going to do? Just for the end, a little advice. Always remember your goals and dreams and search a way to do it. We are the team number 2 and we hope you have a nice day.